Tonight we bring you the first in a three-part series called Desperate Measures, about the challenges patients and their families face when treatment options run out and the only thing left to try is experimental drugs. We begin tonight with a story of patients who appeal to drug makers for so-called compassionate use of their drugs. Meg Terrell has the story.
Go.
Natalie Trawler is determined to succeed, whether on the soccer field or training her dog, Missy.
Good girl.
Now she's tackling the challenge of her life. 2 years ago, Natalie was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer, alveolar soft part sarcoma.
I started getting these really bad headaches, and they were a lot worse than normal. And so my mom took me to the doctor one day, and they were doing some x-rays and stuff, and eventually found that I had a large tumor in my chest.
The cancer had already spread to Natalie's brain. Since then, she's been through 10 surgeries, radiation, and multiple medicines, some with difficult side effects.
None of them really seemed to have a good effect on my cancer.
Natalie's doctors at Oregon Health and Science University's Knight Cancer Institute have identified a new class of drugs they think may work for her, immunotherapies. They harness the immune system to fight cancer. But they're not yet approved, and Natalie doesn't qualify for ongoing clinical trials. She's 3 years too young.
We were hoping maybe there could be an age exception made or some sort of provision so that she could try, some of medicine's best ideas. We just kept finding that door was closed.
The Trawlers are in a position countless others have been before. They're out of options among approved drugs or those available through clinical trials, and Natalie's running out of time. So they turn to compassionate use, a system designed to act as a last resort.
And compassionate use is a way for people to get access to promising new therapies outside of the context of a clinical trial.
Brian Drucker, director of OHSU's Knight Cancer Institute, has adopted Natalie's cause.
But with some promising new therapies, we may exclude somebody for sometimes a relatively trivial reason. In Natalie's case, it's her age. And if we understand that she has the right characteristics or we think she might respond, we might want to provide access to her for that medication.
Patients applying for compassionate use need the support of their physician, an okay from the FDA, and a drug maker willing to supply the medicine. That's where Natalie and many others have gotten stuck. The Trawlers and their doctors have asked Genentech, Bristol Myers, and Merck for access to their immunotherapies. They've all said no.
The companies say a number of issues play into their decisions, including having enough supply of the experimental medicines for clinical trials and how thoroughly the drugs have been tested.
But pressure is mounting on drug makers, not just for Natalie, but for many other patients and their families that turn to social media with their pleas. But it's a complicated issue.
2 or 3 out of hundreds have seen any benefit. Sometimes people say to me, but what's the difference? If you're dying, why not take the shot? New drugs can kill you faster. New drugs can make you sicker.
Natalie's dad says they understand the risks.
What we do know for sure is we know exactly what Natalie's disease does when it's unchecked. And it's excruciating pain, it's things that limit her. And with some of these new medicines, actually the risk is less than other medicines in the past.
And Meg Terrell is with us now. Meg, these raise important ethical questions, business questions. What are the limits of compassionate use? When does it make sense? When does it not?
Right. So talking with the FDA and talking with Dr. Drucker, who we just featured in the package, they really say you do need the support of your physician to try to interact with the drug makers. And there needs to be a scientific rationale behind asking for a specific drug. It can't be a shot in the dark. There has to be some reason to think it might work. And in Natalie Trawler's case, she did test positive for a biomarker for these immunotherapy drugs. And so they think there's a good scientific reason. And also there has to be reason to think that the potential benefit outweighs the potential risk.
Yeah.
So it's a tough situation.
Now, the 3 companies that said no, what are the odds? Do they ever change their mind? Can you reapply or appeal to them again?
Well, the family has certainly been continuing to try to do that and talking to them all the time. It's rare that we've seen that happen, but there was a case. Josh Hardy was a 7-year-old boy, is an 8-year-old boy now, was asking for an experimental antiviral drug from a company named Chimerix, and they had a really strong social media campaign, and that's another element to this story. Patients are getting a much stronger voice through social
So
media.
social pressure on the companies.
Yeah, and that helped Chimerix reach an agreement with the FDA to start a new clinical trial. They enrolled Josh as the first patient. But as you mentioned earlier, there are ethical considerations here. There were a lot of other patients who'd asked for that drug, and they didn't get it before. So there are these questions of inequity in the system.
You mentioned some of the reasons why a company might say no. In other words, that they don't have enough supply to supply to the clinical trial. What are some of the other reasons, and do the companies have to tell you why they rejected your request?
There aren't a lot of guidelines over how you communicate about this, and that's one of the issues in the system, people tell me. But the other reasons they say no, it's really all about getting drugs to market for the broadest population of patients as fast as possible. And the companies say you have to do that through clinical trials. And we take a much closer look at this in our next package on this, which runs tomorrow night.
Yeah, what do you have tomorrow night? Remind us.
It's a look at why the companies say no. So I talked to a lot of companies about how they make these decisions. And these are real people at drug companies, and they're making heart-wrenching decisions about this.
Yeah, I would not envy them being in that position and having to say no to a beautiful young girl like that. On the other hand, there are mortality issues if she takes the drug and something happens, and that leads to liability issues as well.
That's absolutely right.
Meg, we look forward to Chapter 2 tomorrow.
Thank you.